Hi, this is Trina Gregory. This video is going to be about creating a model for our Lab3 Fortunes app. Model is part of MVC, Model View Controller. The model is supposed to hold the data for our project. It's like the data structures or the classes that help us create the data structures for our objects for our app. So first let's open up Xcode and create a new project. Single view application for the phone, put your name. For the class prefix, put your initials. I'm just going to put USC, and then I'm going to put Fortunes. This is our Fortunes lab. Here we go. So model view controller, I like to create groups for my model view controller. Not always, but this is a good project to do that with. So I'm going to create a group called model. I'm going to create another group called view and another group called controllers. You can put them in any order you want. As you know, the view is really our storyboard. It's our user interface. So I'm going to drag that into my view. There we go. My model is going to keep we're going to create a model that with classes. And then my controllers are going to be like our view controllers here. So I'm going to come in here and put those in my controllers. And then my app delegate, I'm actually going to just put into my supporting files, since we don't need to change our app delegate in this one. So now let's create a model. To do that, we actually want to create some new files. You can either use the library over here for Objective-C class, or you can use the File, New File. And here, iOS, Cocoa Touch, we're going to create an Objective-C class. When we do this, it will create the H and the M, the header and the implementation. We can tell it what we want it to be a subclass of, so what is its parent class. We want to leave it as NS object. We're going to create it as USC Fortunes model. It's going to say what project do we want to add it to. We want to add it here in Fortunes. And now we have two files here in our model, the H and the M. If we look on the assignment, you will see that in the assignment, you need to have a model holding an array for the answers and a string for the secret answer. So it says here, create a model, name it XYZ Fortunes model. I did that. It needs to hold a private property named answers and a public property named secret answer. So if we want a private property, then we need to put it in the M, the implementation. But we need to do it in our class extension, and we actually don't have a class extension yet. So let's put a class extension here. If you don't remember the exact text, we can click here to the code snippets over here in the lower right-hand corner in our library, our code snippet library, and you can actually say class extension, and we can drag this here. And then here we can go in and change the class name. Of course, the class name is the name that we're creating. It's the class we're creating. So USC Fortunes model. Perfect. So this is where we put our private properties. I'm just putting some comments just so it's easy for you to see that. So I know that I want a private property. So at property, strong. It's not an IB outlet or anything. Remember, now we're kind of separating that. This is our model, strong, non-atomic, and I said in the assignment that I want an NS mutable array. And we can call it answers. So now this means that I have a private property called answers that is of the type NS mutable array. The assignment also said to create a public property named secret answer. So the public property goes into your H. That's your public header. So this is where we put our public properties. So we know that we want a property that is always properties that are not ID outlets are strong, non-atomic for mobile, and as string. Secret answer. So now we have a public property, secret answer, which is of type NS string. The assignment then says that we need to add these following public methods. Public methods need to go into our public interface, our .h file. So we'll do public methods. Right here, that's just a comment. I copied and pasted it. You'll see we need to make sure and put our semicolons at the end. I'm saying, oops, there we go. So I need to create a method that will return a random answer. This one returns the number of answers. This one returns the answer at index, where you pass in the index. This one here is remove answer at index with an index. This is insert answer at index. If you want to, you can put this on the same line, and a semicolon. So these are going to be our public methods. You can see they're instance methods because it has the minus here, not the plus. Class methods would be with the plus. These are instance methods. Now I need to implement these methods. To implement them, I need to put them in my .m file, my implementation file. So I need to put them here. I'm going to paste them to start out with, and just to start out with, kind of give some spacing between them so we can fill in the code. And another thing is we don't want the semicolons anymore, right? Before we were just doing the signature, the method signature. Now we actually want to fill in the code. We want to display a random answer. So I will put some more parentheses in here, or curly braces, sorry, curly braces. Set this up. Okay. We're getting errors because it's expecting you to return something, but we haven't returned anything, so that's why it's giving an error. But before we do that, there's another important step here, which is create an init method. And this actually inits our answers and our secret answer. So we want to create this method to actually allocate the memory and alloc and init our answers and our secret answer. So to do that, I'm going to come down to my library over here again on the right-hand side and do code snippet, and I'm going to search for init. And there you see Objective-C init method. I'm going to drag it. This is a method that goes in the implementation, so I'm going to drag this, click, drag, let go, and it creates an init method right here. The statements, this is where we get to put code statements. So we get to put things like I want to set up my answers and my secret answer. So I want to set a value for my secret answer. I'll use the one we used in class, which is you will receive 100% on this lab. And we need to create the answers mutable array as well. Notice in this init, I am using the underscore and then the property name. This means I'm using the instance variable. When we use self dot and then the property name, we're actually calling the get and set methods. Whereas when we use the underscore, we are accessing straight the instance variable that's created. And that's what we want to do in an init, because this is actually where we're creating it. So here I'm going to, whenever we want to create something, we alloc and init. So I'm going to use mutable array. It's a mutable array. I'm going to alloc it, and then init with objects, And then this is where I can just put in a whole bunch of strings for my with my fortunes. Just gonna put a couple of different fortunes. I'm gonna put a comma at the end of each of them. You can create your own. There's a nice fortune for you. When you're done, you need to terminate it with a nil. This means that you are done. There's no more answers. You have to put a comma and then a nil, and that says that I am done, and then it will know to allocate enough space to enter these 4 strings. Now that we have actually allocated and init, then we can actually go and implement our methods that we need to implement. So first of all, let's do an easy one, which is number of answers. We want to return the number of answers. Remember that on an NS array, which is the parent class of NS mutable array, there is a method called count. And you can get the count of the elements of the array. So we're going to return answers here, count. We just implemented number of answers, and instead of, it's giving us an error because there's an error here, we haven't returned a string. So if we just put a return and then any string, it will be happy with us again. So I'm just going to do that temporarily, just so we can see that it's going to compile correctly. So we've got the number of answers, but now instead of doing random answer, I'm going to first do answer at index. For answer at index, what we want to use is the methods built into NS array. And on NS array, there's a method called object at index. Well, if you pass in an index, it will give you the answer. So that's what we're going to use here. We're going to say return self.answers, our property up there, return self.answers, object at index. That's answer at index. It will return the object at the index passed in here. Now let's do remove answer at index. So again, we're going to use a method off of NS. This time we're going to use a method off of NS mutable array. We can insert and remove using NS mutable array. So this time I'm going to create a variable just so you can, so hopefully it's a little bit easier to see. I'm going to create an NS unsigned integer for number of answers equals, and this time I'm going to say self number of answers, which means I am calling the method I already implemented right here. It's going to call self.answersCount. I'm going to get the number of answers. If the index that is passed in is less than the number of answers, then we can remove it. We don't want to remove an element that actually doesn't exist or pass in an index that is bigger than our array. So once we know that it's valid, we'll say self.answers, and we'll use the remove object at index. There we go, method. To insert an answer, we're going to do the same idea, where we're going to say NS unsigned integer number of answers equals self number of answers. If the index that we want to insert at is less than or equal to the number of answers, because maybe they want to add it at the very end, then we can go ahead and add it. Self.answers, insert object, and this is using this variable here of answer, and then at index, and we pass in the index here of where we want to add it. Now we have insert answer. Now we're going to go back and get the random answer. So we're going to use this object at index again, but we don't know what index. We want to get an object, but we want a random index. So I'm going to create an NS unsigned integer called index, and it's going to equal, I'm going to use the random function, which returns a long, and then I mod it by the number of answers. So I mod it by self.number of answers, and that will give us an index from 0 to the number of answers minus 1. Once I have my index, then I can say return self.answers object at index, and I can pass in this index I just created, and it will give us a random answer. Now that we've done the header and the implementation, we actually need to go in and create one of these objects. We want to use our model. So I'm going to go into my controller class here, and one of the things I tell you to do is change the name. So let's change it to Fortunes View Controller. I'm going to click on the H, grab the name right here, either control click or right click, refactor, rename, and I'm going to add Fortunes right in the middle of it. Fortunes. It's going to go through and rename the storyboard as well as the view controller files. Done. The only thing it doesn't change is the comments. So now I'm going to come in and change the comments right there. Now that I've done that, I need to come in here and actually I want to create a model. So the first thing, I know I need my class. I need my USC Fortunes model. And you always import an H file, the public header file. I come in here and I actually want to create a property. So I'm going to create a property. So these are my private properties. I'm going to create a property for my model. It's going to be strong, non-atomic. I called it USC Fortunes model. And I'm going to create a variable, a property named model. Whenever we create something like this, we always need to alloc and init. We actually created an init method on the model, so we need to call that. So I'm going to go into my view did load. Always do the super first in a view did load and in most files. So now I'm going to come in here and I want to take my self.model equals USC Fortunes model. I'm going to alloc, and then I'm going to init. And that's going to call that init method that we created. Some people as well like to use the underscore model in the view did load. So now that we've created our model, I actually want to test insert and deleting. To test it, I'm just going to use nslog to print out how many we have, because we don't have any way of checking in our interface. So I'm going to say number of answers, and I'm going to call self.model number of answers, that wonderful method we created. Then I'm going to add insert an answer, insert answer. Let's just insert a new fortune. So new fortune. At index, we can just put it as 0. Then we want to print out the number of answers again. Then we want to remove answer at index. We can just remove one of them as well. I'll remove the same one that I added. And then I want to print it out as well again. And maybe I will say so after init, I have the number of answers. And then I will say here nslog call insert answer and then I will come here and say nslog call remove answer at index. We're going to save it, save all of them, and now we're going to run it. I'm opening up this bottom part so we can see this as well. So even though we've done nothing to the interface, we can still check that our model is working correctly. We had 4 answers. We called insert, we have 5. We called removed, we have 4. We know our model is working.